Hi, I'm Shoma Chaudhury. Thank you for watching Enquiry. 2 days ago, on Sunday, a brilliant, talented, successful young actor, Sushant Singh Rajput, was found hanging in his apartment. His tragic suicide at 34 has sent shockwaves across the country. It's brought attention, of course, on the issue of mental health and the intense need to seek help in time and open up conversation about millions who are struggling with difficult internal landscapes. But it's also brought attention on the issue of nepotism, bullying, and power dynamics within the hyper competitive industry of Bollywood. What does it take to swim and survive in that landscape? What is it that broke Sushant Singh Rajput's spirit? I had the pleasure of meeting Sushant 2 years ago, and the man I met was not just incredibly gifted, but someone who was vigilant, self aware, and in constant conversation with himself. To cast light on the tragedy of why he took his life, I have a very special guest at Enquiry today, Abhishek Kapoor, the director who introduced him to Bollywood with the film Kaipoche and who subsequently shot Kedarnath with him in 2018. Abhishek hasn't yet shared his thoughts with anyone else, and I'm very grateful to him for trusting himself with Enquiry. Thank you very much for joining us, Abhishek. Abhishek, you are somebody who introduced Sushant to Bollywood. You were the first director to give him a big break with Kaipoche back in 2013. Who was the boy that you met? What about him attracted you to give him that break?
This is after Rock On, and when I was working on the script for Kaipoche, and I couldn't get some bigger leads for this film, and because it was about three boys and all that, so it was not easy to cast with bigger names. So I decided to go ahead with a fresh lot, and then with my casting director, we got these three boys together, and they had a magical dynamic internally. But I remember at that time, Sushant was quite overweight. He was about 14, 15 kilos heavy. But the vibe was right. And he was being positioned for the role that had the climax. So it was a very important part. And so I wasn't sure if he'd be able to drop those 14, 15 kilos. And he wouldn't speak much. So normally before you get to know an actor, you just get to hear them articulate the thoughts and what they feel. So he wouldn't speak much. So I was not so sure, but he started to train. And then when he started to train, he just went for it. And he had lost that 14, 15 kilos. The kind of reference images I had sent him, he was exactly like that. He did his cricket practice. And we would do readings and all of that, but I still didn't have a sense of what his performance would be because I'd never seen any of his work earlier. I'd just seen him audition for me and with the two other boys. And I remember the first day of shoot when that scene was being played out. And I had certain expectations. यहाँ तक पहुंचेगा ये scene, तो मुझे इसको यहाँ से यहाँ ले जाऊँ. But he hit some seriously high notes there, And I was thrilled, and we both of us exchanged. He could see that I was very happy with what he did because that was just the start of our journey.
What was that first scene?
It's when Ishan is sitting on the ground and he's talking to the guys with a bat in his hand, and he's talking to them how to knock a bat. And I said, just do it. Let's see you do it now because we've read it so many times. But he was just not reading lines. He had become it on the first shot itself. He had become Ishan.
So, Abhishek, you got to know him a lot through that film, and it wasn't just any ordinary film. It was a film about riots. It was about a film about failure, about friendships falling apart. So the plot itself and the film itself was such intense material. Did you get to know him as a person beyond just his acting skills? And again, what about him then? For you, what was the essential Sushant that you got to know at that time?
As two people making a movie together, we are so involved in our work. And there is a script. In that script, there are so many characters. He's playing a very important character in it. And we constantly talk about the scene, the character, the motivations, and the repercussions, and there's so much to discuss. We are aware of each other's social lives and our friends and whoever our girlfriends are, but we never discuss it. It's never a conversational point. We we're working together. We just keep it up all when we work together. We go back to our lives and we do socialize once in a while. But it's not that we are into each other socially and friends and work. We have a healthy distance on certain levels, but professionally, when we were working together, I mean, it was just there. And when he'd come on set, it'd be palpitating. Like he'd be on, especially on Kai Poche, because all three of them were on fire. So, I would just wait कि कभी आएंगे और कब तमाशा शुरू होगा and we'll start shooting. Because they were just beautiful together.
Cause little did we know the good times come and go, but the best is yet to come.
And so, what was your experience of launching him, Abhishek? What is that relationship you felt with him, and over the years that you've known him? And also, when you're talking about this creative interaction with him, you have now worked with so many actors. Was there anything unique about the way he interacted with material? Was there anything special about that?
When you make a film, at least when I make a film, I take my time, because I take my time on my script. I really enjoy my characters. And I mean, irrespective of whether the world likes them or not. But I don't spare any effort to make them come alive as to the best of my ability. And even with the character Sushant is playing, I mean, ironically, at the end of it, he dies. So I have written a film where he's going to go. So when we talk about it, we are working scenes backwards for maximum impact in the end. So I write dialogues for him that will complement him there. And there's so much. And it's so surreal actually that when this happened, I've seen this happen with him twice before in both my films, And those films are real when we're making them. I believe them, and so does he. So it's very difficult for me to. I don't know how to feel about it. I feel really sad, but I'm sorry I digressed. Your question.
No, but when we first spoke, you said that it's almost like losing a child because the amount of just investment of emotion.
When you launch a person, you're seeing them before he's done Chichore, before he's done MS Dhoni, before he has done any of his other work. Now he's got a body of work, but at that time, there's none of this paraphernalia. So you've got this piece, a gem, and you have to make sure it's well presented and it's so virginal, that, and then for the final impact, when you do put him out there and the world celebrates him, there is a feeling, there's a bond that sits. I don't need to own him and dominate him, and he doesn't have to show it to me. These are things that we should both have under our skin now after having made that movie, made that character. It's just there, or you can't force it. You can't. It's just there, And even if people drift apart, I can't take away the fact that it's my child. जब तक वो चमकेगा, तब तक मेरा नाम रोशन होगा. It's a very motherly or fatherly thing to introduce a talent out there. When he's the centerpiece of your film.
Right. So you worked with him in 2013 when you launched him, and then you made another film, Kedarnath, with Sushant in 2018. When he'd already kind of been part of the industry, and now from what one is hearing that, he was already in a bit of a tailspin in terms of within the industry, but he'd done well. Who was the person you met when you made Kedarnath? Was there a difference? Had he handled it well?
He was definitely a different person. I remember another film had released and it had not done well. And everyone was already trashing it. But that's just business. So that there's nothing, that's just competition, and that you got to take head on. But I was determined to make it with him, and I was determined that let it release on Friday, we'll announce this film on a Sunday. So that there is no room for anyone to come in and crush him, I've always felt that this is my guy, boss. Whether I make films with him, there was an instance in the middle after Kai Poche, there was a movie we were supposed to do together. And he didn't do it. He said, I don't want to do this movie, I want to do that movie. And we're like, what the hell are you doing? Do that movie also, but don't do this. And then he went ahead and did that film, and, we parted. But it doesn't, my relationship with my actor can't be just, yaar, ek film nahi ki. I've made a film with him. I will watch you. I'll be pissed off with you for a certain point of time, but I'll wait. I'll reach out to you again. I'll get you back because we have a bond, boss. You know, there is a very deep bond. I mean, there are people, you can ask other filmmakers also launch people, and then you feel that ownership of that person. But at the same time, you can't hold on to it and empower myself because I have a star. He's out there for everyone to use and celebrate, and he should fulfill his destiny with the kind of work that he wants to do. So he would say, "I'm ये film कर रहा हूँ, जाके कर, तोड़ के आना है, boss. This is a great part." If he came with something that is not so good, I say, "Yeah, you're falling for a trap. You're going for the wrong." At least I would speak my heart with him. You know?
But Abhishek, what is that psyche of belonging to Bollywood? When you launched him,
he's an actor. He was also a star, but above everything else, he was an artist. And artists are fragile. If you want a real pure performance, something really original, like you'll have great actors, who can do a scene in 10 different ways. But there's an artist who can just do a small scene in such a unique manner that has such purity and innocence. But to reach that innocence, that person has to lose himself and dive into that character and find that one nuance that as writers you can't imagine. But you have to dive into that. And artists do that. And in that process, there's a lot of fragility because they've shed a lot, and they need to be taken care of. I have experienced it because as a film producer, I've launched many newcomers, but I've not had I can make the film, I can put my heart into it, I can put you on that screen, and I can make sure that the audience has loved it. But I can't get you that validation certificate that the media has to celebrate you, or that magazine cover will get for you, because I'm not that producer. So I was lacking in that department for some actors who say, "Yeah, boss, you delivered me, but how will I get that?" And that comes from certain other areas, and that's really unfortunate that he has to keep seeking for it. And I used to tell him, "Boss, wahan pe koi nahi hai. You're already a star. Do not expect other people to validate that for you. The day they do it, that is good for them. You have to know who you are, and you are a star." And he would buy into it. But I've seen all of them. They look for that validation, and validation comes from recognition and our award ceremonies, which are so trash. They're just terrible. And then we've got social media that is just madness. And above everything else, you've got management who's there to only look at you as a commodity and sell you. Chak, chak, chak. They don't even look at you कि यार अच्छा ये किस किस्म का आर्टिस्ट है, क्या टेम्परामेंट है उस आर्टिस्ट का, इसके लिए क्या सही रहेगा, इसके लिए you have to custom make profiles, how he should be managed, how he should be sold, how he should be marketed. Because very gentle, caring. You're going to make crores of rupees off him. At least pay attention and bespoke a package, that maintains him spiritually, maintains his mind so he can give you better things. There's irresponsibility on these parts. I know that he's changed many managers, but he was fragile. He had become fragile. And what happens is that, Sushant was extremely brilliant. He was brilliant. He was a topper in engineering. He was into astrophysics and quantum physics, and he was just out there. There was something there that was just genius. But because we couldn't stereotype it, or we couldn't put it into the container that we can understand, we start to say, "Oh, he's off." He is off. He's just off your radar. Yeah. So, instead of bringing him down to your game, just spend some thing. And also, if you're not like us, then you can't be with us. There is that feeling. There is that feeling for actors. See, I'm a filmmaker. I isolate myself. I make my movies, and I've grown very thick skin. I've been around for long, so I know what it is. But I can only caution a young man getting out there after I've put him there. I can talk to him. I can tell him, but he can't see it at that time. It is so bright. The lights are so in your face, and you just flow with it. It's intoxicating. So you lose yourself,
So Abhishek, I'll come back to him a little more in detail because I met him 2 years ago, and I was just looking at that interview again. And the person I met was again exactly like you described, someone who was so deeply sort of self-aware, very, very intelligent. And I was looking at that interview. There are two words that predominated the interview. One was awareness. He kept saying, I'm aware, I'm aware, I'm aware of the process. He was very self-vigilant. He was describing Dan Gilbert. He talked about the hedonistic impact of, both success and failure. He said, you imagine that when you arrive at an event, that the high will take you somewhere, or if you fail, the low will take you somewhere. And actually, that's not true. The human spirit seeks balance. He spoke of physics, but he also kept speaking of the top 1%, that dominated his conversation. But so it was a very dichotomous man, someone who understood deep processes and yet someone who was talking of that 1%. So I'll come back to that, Abhishek, but just when you're talking about this psyche of the industry, can you talk of that a little bit more? There's been so much talk now about nepotism, about outsiders, about the difficulty of breaking in. Is there machinery that is easier for children born into the industry and for an outsider?
Of course it is easier. I mean, that is but obvious. It is much easier because the parents have got, and that's also okay. Parents will do what they have to do for the children. But don't discredit the outsiders. Don't not celebrate him because that celebration of an artist is oxygen for him. He will die if you do not celebrate him. And knowing that he has so much to give. He may not be the most beautiful man, he may not have the most baritone voice, he may not have, the most articulate way of speaking, but there's the magic that he puts together in different elements of himself. Is an artist. He may not be from a Western country, he may be vernacular, he may have, from a small town. But let's just be generous as from one artist to another and learn to appreciate individuality. Everyone doesn't have to be like us or against us, There seem to be so many camps, and if you're not part of the camp, then you are just like you're not. Even if you're in the middle of the room, you're ignored. Just ignore it as if it doesn't exist. But it kills individuality, and it will kill a good artist has a mind of his own. The media can't tell the artist what he should be doing next, or a filmmaker what they should be doing next, and this is wrong. You should be able to follow the artist.
So Abhishek, we were talking about the underbelly of success and the industry. What did Sushant have to go through? Who was the person that you met in Kedarnath? What had the years in the industry done for him in terms of the success as well as the underside of what he was facing?
At that time, when we went to shoot for Kedarnath, he was quite troubled because the media was after him and they were after me. Both of us were getting slammed, him even more so, I think. And I don't know if the days we were shooting in Kedarnath, at the same time we'd get news of such negative articles coming out about him. All lies, and they were just slandering. Non-stop slandering was going on a daily basis, and it was quite disturbed. But when we went to set, it was 100%. He was climbing up mountains with a lady on her back. Every day, he would put her in a tokri and carry her up. And he was giving it. In fact, I had to spend so much time on Sara, and I did not give him so much time. And normally I would sit with him on his character, but because Sara was new in this film, I would pay more attention to her and all of that. But he was just doing his job on the side, and just delivering it. It's not easy to walk up a mountain carrying someone on your back repeatedly, take after take, take after take.
Yeah.
And then he was being tortured in that film. I had him in the rain, in freezing cold in Kedarnath. He was shooting some rain sequences for me. He never even, not a whimper. I cannot tell you how cold it is. I've seen him turn blue. I will show you those images. He is shuddering in cold, but he didn't make a noise. Never threw a tantrum when he was working with me. Never. He just worked like a dog, like a horse.
So, Abhishek,
I mean, physically he's so strong. Even mentally, he was very strong. He could achieve anything he could achieve any role that he wanted to. But the artist in him is so fragile, that looks to get. मुझे कुछ चाहिए मुझे को उसको समझ ही नहीं आ रहा कि वो है क्या. They create the business if you are not supported by uh, the media and the kind of a nexus or whatever you want to call it. You will have such existential issues. You will lose yourself in that. You will not know. You can lose who you are. You're totally disoriented. So you're into a tizzy. You don't know where you are.
so what occasioned that with him, Abhishek? How do you understand it? Was you were talking earlier about the fact that he just wasn't factory built. He had other concerns. He's put out a bucket list of the 50 things he wanted to do. That actually made me teary, because here was a soul who was wanting to paint the aurora borealis. He wanted to explore Andromeda. He wanted to teach children. He wanted to teach women self-defense. He wanted to dive into blue holes. His passions and his ambitions were so varied. They were not factory cut at all. But he was, like you said, like a very intelligent, handsome guy. What was the basis of the ostracization that he was facing?
I don't know what the basis of it is. I don't know what the basis of it is. I don't want to sound like I'm casting aspersions on anyone. The business is harsh, and it requires, I would say, some shortcomings in me that I could not, hustle and convince him that I can get you the magazine covers and I'll get you this, I'll get you that. And I can't do that. I couldn't do that. And for that, he has gone seeking elsewhere. And what happens is that if you are not, मतलब कहीं ना कहीं आप वो ढूंढने निकले अपने घर से तो कहीं आप अकेले पड़ जाते हो. वो अकेला का कोई बाप नहीं होता वहां पे. Then you don't get taken in because तुम किसी और के हो शायद. I don't know. I don't know.
You were talking about the fact that when you met him again at Kedarnath, you had to adapt to the new person. Can you go into that some more? What was the new
person? Means I just felt that he had a lot of load on his shoulders. I could feel it. We didn't talk about it much. We just knew that all these media articles were coming rapidly hitting him. They were just very nasty.
What were they saying? Like, what was it about?
You can just look them up, or I can, they'll be somewhere. All of them.
The only reason I'm probing that is that you said that he himself was a complicated guy. So we've looked at a little bit of what brought on the vulnerability and the fragility. But was he being able to write the success end of it well? There's stories about how manager after manager was leaving him. So had a certain abrasiveness. Was that coming out of vanity and hubris, or was that coming out of pain? Do you have any sense of that?
Saying again, I think he was a brilliant artist, and like most artists, he was fragile. The ecosystem doesn't give you strength for individuality. You can't be who you want to be and say what you want to say and just operate the way you want to, the freedom. You've got to be like us, or you can't stick around. So and once you have that, you're going to something ephemeral in a personality is going to get choked, and then you're going to put him into a tailspin, and then he's going to behave in a certain way, and then you're going to say, oh, he behaves badly, and then he's going to just go into another, behave badly, and then he behaves badly, and then you've got that. So it gets into a system. He was off in a way that he was intense about his work. People who work closely with him will tell you he was a brilliant actor, so compassionate. He did have such thoughts that he wanted to articulate, and you just give him some time and he would just come a different way to explain himself, But you need to give a person time, an individual time. In the case of Dhoni, I remember, nobody gave him credit. They kept saying, "अरे मगर ये तो धोनी है यार, अरे पिक्चर धोनी की वजह से चली, ठीक है, धोनी है, धोनी की वजह से भी चली है, मगर हमारे फिल्म इंडस्ट्री वाले हमारे एक्टर को तो क्रेडिट दे सकते हैं। आप ये सोच के ये बोलोगे कि यार मगर वो फिल्म धोनी की वजह से चली, सुशांत की वजह से नहीं चली, ये बात चल रही थी इंडस्ट्री में, यू नो, इट्स जस्ट व्हाई वुड यू डू दैट? कोई और एक्टर होता तो मतलब उस एक्टर को क्रिकेट खिलाना शुरू कर देते और धोनी को घर बिठवा देते। हमारे इंडस्ट्री वाले कर सकते हैं ऐसा कि अगर just go after someone and they want to lift you up, you know. So he didn't get that kind of support, you know, and maybe it is just foolish of us and him to expect that the industry will, or it just happens on its own. It doesn't happen on its own. It's a generated
Embrace
program. It's a full on, you know, the media, the social media, and then there's so many other layers to layers, and they all are made to work in a way to give you that certificate. Oh, you arrived. You may have arrived. It's like, you know, being in a movie premiere and picture theater में भी लगी है, movie premiere में भी लगी है, मगर और stage पे हमारा picture खत्म हो गई और कोई तालियां नहीं मार रहा और मेरा actor बोल रहा है यार ये अच्छी नहीं लगी, तालियां नहीं मार रहे। अच्छा बॉस छोड़ना इनको, बाहर सब थिएटर में तालियां बज रही, इसे मगर यहाँ पे तालियां नहीं बज रही। ऐसे यहाँ नहीं बज रही कोई बात नहीं, बाहर थिएटर में बज रही है सब जगह। अच्छा, यू नो, मैनिफेस्टेशन नहीं हो रहा उस क्रेडिट का, वो बहुत चूस जाता है आदमी अंदर से। कैन यू इमेजिन यार, आप एक फूल को धूप नहीं दोगे तो क्या होगा उसका?
You know, it's again the Karan Johar has written a post that I wish I had reached out. So many people have written that I knew you were suffering and we didn't reach out. He himself in an interview I think it was around 2 years ago, had already started speaking about how insipid everything was, that there was no meaning, that, you know, he had achieved what he had set out to and all of it had been drained of meaning. Just help one understand, Abhishek, that is there no system within the industry which, you know, were there no friendships? Was there nothing? Was there no support structure? What happens within the industry?
No, it is, everyone has certain goals. You know, you have to achieve certain things. You have to, and you have achieved the goal and you validate yourself with that. You know, but as artists and actors, when the system is so bad that it kind of comes in and management picks you up and it shreds the human being out of you and shows you that reflection of you in the mirror कि यार तेरे इसके 2 करोड़, इसके 5 करोड़, इसके 4 करोड़, अभी इसको छोड़ तो इसके साथ काम कर, तेरे को ज़्यादा। They don't realize that while making that film, that manager is not making the film. The actor, the director, the writer are making a movie together. It's a very interpersonal exchange. They don't know how to step out of the room from that, you know, and they come out there and then they strip you like that. And after that, they take away the basic thought that you are not to compete with another actor. You are an artist. Artists can only compete with themselves. You have to just better yourself or, you know, evolve into something else and enjoy your own journey as an artist, especially when you are successful in whatever capacity. But अगर मैं आपको बार-बार दिखाऊंगा कि वो बाजू वाले का इतना मिल रहा है, तेरे को ये, आप तो इधर जाओ उधर, मतलब इतना unhealthy environment कि ज़्यादातर फिल्ममेकर जो है उनका काम है कि हासिल करो एक्टरों को, कि डेटों को, उनको जब वो आपकी एनर्जी 100% में से 80% वहां जाएगी तो बचा 20% एनर्जी और दिमाग के साथ ही फिल्म बनाएंगे.
So the person you knew that he had this very high intelligence. He had that capacity.
He had incredible potential, but people just needed to be a little bit more gentle to say यार ये unique piece है यार. But actor है तो unique piece ही होना चाहिए ना. एक जैसे सब, मतलब आपको एक प्रोटोटाइप चाहिए, एक के दूसरे तीसरा चौथा पांचवा. एक नई चीज आई है तो नई चीज को नई चीज से देखो, नया सेलिब्रेट करो उसको भी. अगर वो हमारे उस डब्बे पे नहीं बैठ रहा ना तो यार निकाल दो. You know, it's just, in a way it's not visible, but it's a systematic dismantling of a very fragile mind. You know, automatically हो जाता है यहाँ पे चक टक टक. इस सिस्टम को जरा दोबारा लोगों को अंदर झांके देखना पड़ेगा.
So, Abhishek, the Sushant that you knew, even under this kind of pressure, in this humiliation, or what you just put beautifully, the dismantling of the self that he was undergoing, did you feel that he was a guy who would ever be able to take his own life? Did you have even sense that he had reached a place of such sorrow and despair or darkness?
You know, I had not spoken to him for about a year and a half. There were times we talk, then he'd go away to do a film, then he'd just disappear. He must have changed his number 50 times, mobile number. And I remember when Kedarnath was coming out, the media just slammed it, And I think, I don't know what happened. And he could see that he was not getting the kind of love because everything was going centered around Sarah at that time. I don't know. I was not talking to him. He was not talking to me at that time. He was just kind of lost. Then I sent him a few messages. Then the film released and it did really well, And then again, I sent him a message. I'll tell you what I sent him. This is the last exchange I had with him. Bro, I've been trying to reach you. I'm not sure if you're upset, busy or what, but call me so we can chat. We made a super film together again. If we are not going to celebrate it, then who the hell is going to celebrate? Then what the hell are we going to celebrate in life? So please call me, I love you. And he didn't respond. Then I sent him a message again in January, and he didn't respond on his birthday. So I just let him be. I said, I got just, I could see he's not in a good place. I could see that. But you cannot cross a line. You have to meet someone halfway. You can reach out to someone. But if I overextend and give unsolicited advice, it is never appreciated and it loses its value. So I can only wait a halfway mark and say, कब आएगा? कभी-कभी मैं सोचता हूँ फोन लगाऊं इसको मैं वाला ये उसको करने दे जब वो करेगा ना तो उनको पकड़ूंगा उसे किया ही नहीं उसे
The one of the strands that has been discussed now arising out of this is this constant refrain now of nepotism within the industry, of actually there being, it's being called the mafia, but it's probably more just like creative alliances which don't allow others to break through.
Let me tell you what I think of this nepotism business. This nepotism business is seeded by the media. The first ones to celebrate a celebrity's kids or to go crazy is the media. Either he takes a star or he launches a new person. But if he's going to launch this star kid, your media is giving them so much free publicity in any case. Now, when a film comes from marketing, that's when you get such an easy boost. So the media and the PR is already rallying around these star kids. So they get that easier entry into a producer's home. If the media stops giving star kids attention like they are themselves stars, automatically the producers will not find value in it. Every producer is not launching his or her own son. They're launching somebody else's son there, and they don't care about each other, but they're just saying, "Ke boss, I bring value with my child because he's already coming with that much viewership." That is the reason people take films. Now, sometimes you can wing it with someone who's not talented. Sometimes they turn out to be talented. But that is the advantage that a star kid has, and that advantage is given to them by the media. But आप किसी को कहीं और से लेके आते हैं क्योंकि उसमें genuine talent है और वो जान देने को तैयार है, मगर वो फिट नहीं होता आपके इसमें तो वो नहीं बिठाते हैं और हमेशा उसको like he could be the best guy for a part, but it's like ignoring the elephant in the room. It doesn't exist. Uska mind bhi, I'm not saying that Sushant is flawless. He was a complicated guy, he's so over smart and intellectually so highly stimulated. But that's when the management comes in. Isko, आप ले रहे हो 15 टका जो भी आप लेते हो इनसे, the moment they're there, boss, let's sell him. Take care of him at least.
What has been your own journey through this, Abhishek? If you've had to train your psyche for this, or did you come in, with a certain temperament that could take this ride, or what were key things that you trained yourself into?
I started my career as an actor, and I struggled very hard. I struggled for many years, and I saw a lot of failure, and I failed at various things, and I also experienced most of these things. But I made it through. And then I went through a darker phase and I made a film, and then I made another movie which became successful, and then I have a career, so to say. So I've seen chappa chappa how these things move, And when I'm making a film, whether I make it with Sushant or anyone, I put everything into it, more money than anything else. I'll raise that money, and then I make them a star, and you put them out. They become stars, and then they just go. So sometimes I've had trouble casting my own films after launching newcomers. But you say it's okay, man. Let them go out, and we'll work with new people and different people. You have to adjust, and there are times when I've really struggled with the fact, to be absolutely honest, that why don't I get out there and hustle this entire media game and be on top of the social media? But I realize it's not for me. It's either I'll do that or I'll be making movies, because it's a totally consuming job. It's a total networking job, and you got to be. It's another play altogether, and it's not my cup of tea. So I can make the movie, I can cast you in it, I can present you well, and put you out there, and maybe the audience will love you. But for you to believe that is in your head. Beyond that, if you're going to look for some kind of validation, you just shouldn't. You should never. You should know in your own heart who you are and what you've done, and move on.
So, through the tragedy of Sushant's death, if there was one thing you wanted to say to the industry, what is it you'd say, Abhishek?
I would ask them to be open to individuality, and be more welcoming. Be more welcoming and be more generous with people with talent. And what I would say to the talent is that know who you are and make sure you have the right voice in your ear. हमेशा वही बात नहीं हो सकती जो आपको सुननी है, या जो सबको मतलब एक स्टीरियोटाइप बनाओ, बेचो.
It's heartbreaking, because everything you're saying is that he really paid the price of being a unique, intelligent, sensitive, in the eyes of others, an oddball. Like, this is a suicide that has arisen out of being an oddball who was beautiful in himself.
Yeah, and that is why I feel compelled to come and have this chat with you about him.
Thank you very, very much, Abhishek. As I said, just one last question. It's a subjective assessment. Did he ever come across to you as someone, the person I met, and the person who was articulating himself was so self-aware that it never seemed possible that he would take his life? Did the person did it ever cross your mind that he could be driven to take his life?
No.
Thank you, Abhishek. I hope that this conversation put out there will dull the noise and, allow everyone actually some space to think, some honest space from which to operate from, so that even the grieving of him is not just the same, alter sense of the noise that perhaps killed him, the same absent-minded cruelties that drove him to take his own life. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with me, Abhishek. Thank you.
Thank you.